in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel, heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell.
All right, everybody, good morning. If that song doesn't get you up and fired up at 7:04, I don't know what it's going to take. Seriously, it makes me want to rise up, red, white, and raise hell. That's what it does for me. But thanks for being here, strictly speaking, unfiltered on a Wednesday, the 14th morning of the first month in the year of our Lord, 2026. And what a day yesterday. What a day at the Supreme Court. I'm still trying to figure something out, and we're going to get into it all. Kirsten is going to join us, by the way. I didn't put his little picture up there, did I, today? That's a me mistake. That's a me problem. You know what? I think wise, because I probably butchered it when I made the graphic. I put tomorrow because I did this yesterday, and if I put it up there today, it's going to look like it's tomorrow. But let me just throw him up there. I think AI got his appearance a little bit better this time here. What do you think? Yeah, that's Pete. Strictly speaking, unfiltered tomorrow morning, which is when I put this out. Kirsten and I will join us to talk about the Supreme Court and whether or not there's such a thing as sex, whether it exists, as in sexual or not orientation, but sexual biology. Are you male or female? Our sex organs. Anyway, last time I had Pete on last week, he was not happy. He said, "That's not me," and he's right. It was a very, very poor AI recreation of him, but I think it got a lot better this time around. So Kirsten and I will join us coming up in the second hour, right at about the top of the hour here. So let me try to drop some of this stuff off of the screen. I got too much clutter up there right now. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure something out. There's 9 members of the Supreme Court. 8 of them have, for better or worse, said they know what a woman is. Why is the 9th sitting in on these hearings? Why is she going to get a vote? I asked that question very, very seriously. Why the hell is Ketanji Brown Jackson hearing the case and going to get a vote in the official opinion issued by the court when she cannot define the word woman? We've all been down this road before already here, and we shouldn't have to do this, but what the hell, let's do this. We can embarrass the hell out of her because she deserves to be. When she was supposed to be considered for Supreme Court, this is during her confirmation hearings, Ketanji Brown Jackson sat there and denied knowing what a woman is. She said because she's not a biologist. Apparently, according to what she believes, you have to be a biologist to know what a woman is. So let's see if we can go ahead and listen to her for a second. Remind ourselves just exactly what DEI looks like in action. DEI. You want to know in 2026 the reason why the midterms should continue to favor the Republicans? Because one party used DEI to fill 2 of the most powerful seats in the world. Joe Biden used DEI to fill his vice president's seat with. He literally said he's going to choose a black female. It had to choose, it had to fill those two boxes. In other words, the most qualified person if it's white female, the most qualified person if it's a black male, the most qualified person if it's a Latino or an Asian. Nope, black female. Hence, here comes Kamala. Then when he got a chance to appoint a Supreme Court justice, he did the same exact thing. Narrowed down all of the field of potential justices and judges with experience and so forth. Narrowed it down to, nope, only going to be a black female. And here comes DEI Ketanji. And you remember this, right? Of course you do.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address.
I babble like a freaking idiot. That's what I do, Senator. I babble like an idiot, and I refuse to acknowledge basic biology. That's what I do. So, no, I can't provide a definition for the word woman. I'm not a biologist. How can that woman, how can that DEI hire at the Supreme Court possibly sit in on this hearing? I'm struggling very hard to understand how anybody thinks that she could be a part of this extraordinarily important case. And by the way, come to find out, nothing has changed in the last few years since Ketanji Brown Jackson was DEI'd to that court. Nothing really has changed, at least on the left. Have a look here. This is the Gateway Pundit's coverage of yesterday's Supreme Court hearings. The lawyer for the ACLU arguing before the DEI, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown said Ketanji was onto something here. If we don't actually acknowledge and say out loud what the definition of a woman is, then we don't have to accept the argument and the reality that men and women are different, and that men are physically, biologically superior to women. They are stronger, they are taller, they are faster, they have thicker bones, they have thicker muscles, they have higher lung capacity, and they will beat the living daylights out of women in any and every sport that there is. It's just biological reality. And if we deny biological reality, well, then, we can, we don't have to have this argument. Let me share a little bit of this for you. Today, the Supreme Court justices listened to arguments from attorneys on whether states can ban biological boys who identify as transgender from playing on girls' and women's sports teams in public schools and colleges. Two controversial cases, Little versus Hecox from Idaho, where a law says sports teams must be based on biological sex at birth. Perfectly reasonable, and the way it's always been until the left took over. Basically, until the left just completely turned America and biology on its head. And then the other one is West Virginia versus BJP, or Becky Pepper Jackson from West Virginia, where a similar law, the Save Women Sports Act, bars transgendered girls from female teams, which means boys. I hate having to try to understand transgender girl, transgender boy. Does that mean they're a boy trying to be a girl or a girl trying to be a boy? And none of us should have to play this stupid freaking semantics game. We should not care. And I do not care, quite frankly. But we should not have to continue to, do that dance. But whether or not boys can be on girls. Becky, in this case, is a boy who has been on hormone therapy and wants to compete in track and field. And apparently Becky has been on hormone therapy since 8 years old. Let me say that again. The puberty blockers started for that kid at age 8. You remember if you're a parent, what your 8-year-old was like? Do you? Do you remember thinking to yourself, wow, my 8-year-old is an extraordinarily deep thinker, super mature, super smart, super in touch and understanding of the world around him, super in touch with his own self, is reasonable and practical and able to make life-altering decisions. My 8-year-old is just super. My 8-year-old is magic. Do you remember that? Remember how great your 8-year-old was? Your 8-year-old was an idiot. And so was mine. And my 8-year-old actually was a pretty brilliant kid. I've got 2 kids. One of them at 8 was a lot more advanced than the other one. But the point being, still an idiot. Want to know why? Because their brains are 8 years into formation. And the brains take about 25 years to actually form fully and functionally. It's why we don't let 8-year-olds sign contracts that will affect the rest of their lives. It's why we don't let 8-year-olds cast votes in elections. It's why we don't let 8-year-olds drink alcohol or own guns. You understand what I'm saying? 8-year-olds are not old enough to know anything about anything. And these lunatics gave that 8-year-old puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones, because that 8-year-old was absolutely much more qualified than doctors and science to determine whether or not he or she wanted to start physically maiming and altering his body for the rest of his life. I mean, I could just stop there and say, okay, thanks everybody for coming by, because that's just some super crazy batshit stuff. Conservative lawyers argued that states have every right to ban biological males from invading girls' and women's sports teams, while lawyers representing the left appeared to be hell-bent on blurring the lines. At one point during their pro-trans in girls' lockers and locker rooms, bathrooms argument, the ACLU lawyer Kathleen Hartnett was asked by Justice Samuel Alito to define a man, a boy, a woman, and a girl. Hartnett appeared to panic as she realized Alito had brilliantly set a trap for her. Unable to answer the question. Are you sure we want to say unable to? Because we just went through it. Ketanji Brown Jackson was unable to do it as well when she was actually being considered to sit on the Supreme Court. Oh, I can't do that. Why not? I'm not a biologist. You can't tell a man from a woman without being a biologist, honestly. Hartnett said they don't have a definition. Let's watch this.
Is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition for equal protection purposes? What does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute.
All right. I have just been informed that we are not live on Rumble. Something is amiss. I don't know exactly what that something is, but I may be broadcasting live right now to the YouTube and Facebook communities who may be watching, but for whatever reason, our Rumble channel is not working at the moment. So I'm going to take a moment here to try to connect that up and see exactly what's going on. So if I am, oops, sorry, hold on one second here. We're still trying to work out the kinks. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. We got to hit a couple of, we got to get a couple of quick fixes here. and see what's going on. Our Rumble community, by the way, this might actually, if I am broadcasting right now and being heard by the Facebook page and or YouTube, if you happen to be watching on that, it's a good time for me to tell you to get over to the Rumble page anyway, because that's exactly where we like to do everything. That's kind of the hub. The Rumble channel is actually the hub. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. So let me see if this fixed the problem and see if we are now live on Rumble. All right, chatters. All right, chatters, let me know if we are in right now, because I had to change a couple of settings here to see if that was the problem here. I do apologize for this. Obviously, this is one of those things, and I said this at the very beginning when we first. Nope, still not on. All right. Okay. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a quick timeout on all of the channels while I fix this, because we got to get on Rumble. That's the hub. That's the main. That's our main operations, place of operations. So bear with me. If you are watching on one of the other channels, I'm going to take a quick time.
Crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel. Heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel, from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell.
All right, everybody, welcome back, I guess, or kind of welcome to the show is the best way to do this. I don't know what. Wow. It took me until what? I was talking for 14 solid minutes doing the show before I was able to realize, by way of the chatters, let me stop sharing that real quick, because now you got to catch up on everything that you missed. Before I realized that we were not live on Rumble. I think we were live on YouTube and we were live on Facebook. Anybody who's watching there, do me a favor. If you're watching on my Facebook page, and if you're watching on the YouTube page, do me a favor and work your way over to watch us on Rumble, okay? I mean, I'm glad you're watching wherever you are, but like I said, I've said many, many times, we need people to congregate in the most important hub space, which is Rumble, because that's when our numbers can grow, and that's when the algorithms will realize that we got to push this out to more people. So having us spread out here, there, and everywhere may not be the best strategy, which is one of the reasons I've been talking about cutting the live feed to the Facebook and the YouTube pages about a half an hour into the show, so everybody has to come to Rumble. But do me a favor, if you were in YouTube or if you are watching on YouTube, go over to Rumble, get into the chat, and tell me if I was live there. It was 7:16 before I realized and was told by message and a lot of other ways that you're not live, you're not on Rumble. And I apologize, because I did 14 minutes of pretty damn great content there before I was told that I wasn't broadcasting out, because we're talking about what happened yesterday in the Supreme Court. So I do apologize, and I guess I can go ahead and drop the technical difficulties little liner I threw up there off as well, because this is actually what I think the start of our 5th week of the show, and we've had a few tech glitches because we're trying to learn how to do things, or I'm trying to learn how to do things, but this one might have been the biggest. I was off for 14 minutes that I thought I was on, so I apologize for that. I'll tell you this. If there was ever a better pitch for me to say, hey, please support the show. If you support the show and we are Patriot funded, I can hire a technical producer to make sure that all of this stuff, because when you have to be, I don't know, when you've got to be operating all of the different controls at the same time, sometimes things get missed. And I still don't know what happened, because it shouldn't have been missed. But nonetheless, I thought I was live and I was not. So yeah, and I do see the folks in the chat room. You guys are pretty amazing, because some people are worried that something happened to me. No, I didn't stroke out before the show. I'm not laying here in the studio, dropped down. But thanks for wondering. I didn't take the COVID shot, so there's very low chance of that. Sorry. But thank you for everybody who's wondering. And I'm looking on the chat window right now. Holy cow. People are saying, where's Bob? Bob forgot to set his alarm clock. No, Charlie. Bob did not forget to set his alarm clock. We were doing our thing for 14 minutes, for crying out loud, before I realized it wasn't going out to the Rumble channel. So I do apologize. But good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Roz. Good morning, Therese. Good morning, Britt. Good morning, John. Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Marty. Good morning, Cad. Good morning, SRL. Good morning, Jimbo. Good morning, John. Good morning, everybody. I feel like I'm reading the Goodnight Moon book to my kid when they were little. Goodnight Moon. If you're a parent, you get it. You understand that. All right. Having said all of that, and if you're a parent, you'll understand why we're talking about the topic we are today, and why the Supreme Court had that very important hearing yesterday. And I got to start all over for the Rumble crowd, it's okay. And by the way, as long as we're being a part of the Rumble crowd, you do realize that it is now time to become part of the locals crowd, don't you? And at least I hope you do. This is going to be such an important part of all of this. Let me drop it on here real quick, just to remind you yesterday, actually Monday it went live, but yesterday it was the first day I was really able to promote it. The locals community that we have set up, there it is. The locals community is going to be such an important part of what we are doing. It is where we will be able to meet with you if you are a paid supporter to the locals community, and it's $10 a month. It's $10 a month for us to get together and to plan the next day's show, to plan the next week's interviews, to plan what topics are the most important to you. I will provide interviews to you that I conduct 24 hours before they go live or before they get pushed out to the rest of the Rumble community. We're going to have live town hall meetings once a week for only paid supporters, which are going to be called Unfiltered Insiders. If you're an Unfiltered Insider and you want to engage directly with me on all of these things that we're dealing with, all of the things that matter most to us, we'll have weekly town halls in which we'll get together and we'll do a live stream just for us, and it'll be within the locals page. Locals and Rumble are like this. They're like hand and fist, okay? Let me share the screen real quick. Yeah, locals and Rumble, they work like this. That's why on the Rumble page, locals and Rumble, the red button is join, and click that join button. It'll take you right to locals. You don't have to be a paid supporter. You can just be a visitor and a part of the community, but you want to have access to the inside stuff that we are talking about. First access to interviews, ad-free videos. We're going to give you, like I said, strategy sessions, town hall meetings, and content that is just not available on the regular Rumble show. So just so you understand, and I'll say it again, Rumble is the show. Locals is the war room. That's where we make the rest of this happen. So if you want to join us on locals, please consider doing that. There it is. As I said, it's really important. And by the way, it's going to act a little bit like Facebook and a little bit like X and a little bit like, YouTube all at the same time, because they're going to be able to post videos. We're going to be able to post articles. We're going to be able to react to those things. And then, like I said, when I have live sessions with just our paid supporters, that's where it will take place. So it's going to have a lot of different tools, or a lot of different tools in the belt for that. All right. So now we go back to restart kind of what we were talking about at the top today, which is extraordinarily important. We're going to talk about what it means to be a boy or a girl, what it means to be a man or a woman. And by the way, if you are just now for the first time seeing this, Peter Kirstenau joins me now in about a half an hour at about 8 o'clock. Kirstenau will join us to break down all of this. He is a seasoned Supreme Court scholar, is Peter Kirstenau. He has testified at the confirmation hearings of at least 3 different Supreme Court justices as a leading figure in the world of law and in government, because he is a member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. So Pete will join us to talk about this Supreme Court case yesterday. And so I started the show by asking this question, and I'll do it now again for the Rumble crowd. Why is this woman, can you see her there? Is she on? Yeah, there she is. Let's give her the bigger spot here for a moment. Why is this woman hearing a case about sex in sports? Why is she allowed to sit on the Supreme Court and listen and participate in oral arguments and questions and answers, and then eventually have a vote on the opinion of the court about whether or not boys should be allowed to invade girls' spaces? Boys should be allowed to be in their locker rooms, in their shower rooms, in their bathrooms, and why boys should be allowed to be on girls' sports teams. Why? Why is she allowed to hear that? Why should she be allowed to decide when, at the grown-up level, men should be allowed to be in women's locker rooms, restrooms, and shower rooms, and on their sports teams and dominating them? How can you be sitting in judgment of anybody on these issues if you don't know what a woman is? By your own words, when you were being considered in Joe Biden's second most egregious DEI hire. And really, it's 1A and 1B. I don't know if, he DEI'd Kamala Harris into the vice presidency, and he DEI'd Ketanji Brown Jackson into the Supreme Court. And everybody knows it. including them, which is why they bristle about it, because they know they were not the most qualified people for those jobs. But Joe Biden had boxes to check because this is the world of left-wing DEI. So Ketanji is the black female he chooses because he said he was going to choose a black female, not going to choose the most qualified jurist or justice. Nope, not a chance. Couldn't be a black male, couldn't be a white woman, couldn't be a white male, God forbid, couldn't be somebody of Asian or Hispanic descent. Nope, black female. So here comes the tallest person in a room full of short people, according to Joe Biden, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And in her own confirmation hearings, we all remember this, right?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments.
Right,
And
enough. What I do is I babble on incoherently like I have something to say. I refuse to say that I am a woman and that I know what a woman is, because it is going to be hell for the DEI supporters who put me here. It is going to play hell on me. I can't acknowledge and admit the truth because I am up here as a DEI hire, and I am up here to blur the lines for everything rational and reasonable. I am here to blur the lines between male and female because I've got an LGBTQ political identity organization and group that I have to satisfy. The same way Joe Biden did. The same way everybody on the left does. So she says she cannot tell you what a woman is because she's not a biologist. How the hell is she sitting on this panel then as a member of the Supreme Court hearing a case? Should she not be forced to recuse herself from this case of deciding what makes a man and a woman? What makes a boy and a girl? Is that what she's saying here? So here's a little bit of coverage. This is the Gateway Pundit talking about the court hearings yesterday. They listened to arguments from attorneys on whether or not states can ban biological boys from playing on biological girls and women's sports teams in public schools and colleges. And again, this is as simple as it gets. We're deciding whether or not a male has physical advantages over a female and whether it's fair or not to the females to let the males play with them. You have to know what a man and a woman is to do this. She can't make that distinction, so therefore, why is she on that bench? The two cases the Supreme Court heard were Little versus Hecox from Idaho and West Virginia versus Bede PJ, which is Becky Pepper Jackson, which is, in both of those states have similar laws. Basically, they're like Save Women's Sports Act laws that bar biological males from participating. In Becky's case, in the West Virginia case, she's been on hormone blockers. Puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones since she was 8 years old. And again, my apologies to the YouTube and Facebook crowds for the redundancy here. While I ask you this question again, do you remember, if you're a parent, do you remember what your 8-year-old was like? Do you remember thinking of your 8-year-old as being some wildly astute, brilliant, mature, old soul, adult-like, perfect reasoning capabilities at the age of 8? Or do you remember your 8-year-old being like every other 8-year-old, and that is being an idiot? 8-year-olds don't know anything. Doesn't mean they're an actual idiot. I mean, I had a couple of 8-year-olds, and one of them was a straight A student at 8 years old, and the other one was wasn't a straight A student. But my point is, they were 8. And good grades or not, they don't know anything about anything. It's the reason why we don't let 8-year-olds get tattoos, permanently disfiguring their bodies at age 8. What are you kidding? Nobody does that. The law doesn't allow that. We don't let 8-year-olds vote in elections because they don't know what the hell they're doing. We don't let 8-year-olds drink alcohol, own guns. We don't let 8-year-olds do just about anything. But this woman, these parents let their 8-year-old, like many, many others, and this is the one that happened to get in front of the Supreme Court, let their 8-year-old decide with their brain just this size and this formed, because brains don't form in just 8 years. Brains form in about 25 years, actually. 25 to 27 years old is when full formation of the brain happens for males and females. For females, it's a little bit earlier, but that's science. So we're going to let preformative brained 8-year-old kids make decisions on mutilating their bodies for the rest of their lives, permanently, mutilating and manipulating their bodies through puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and so much more. It's insane. It's abuse is what it is. Anyway, back to the point here. Lawyers are arguing that every state has the right to ban biological males from invading girls and women's sports teams, while lawyers on the left are hell-bent on blurring the lines between the sexes, which brings us to ACL lawyer Kathleen Hartnett, who was one of the attorneys representing the clients from West Virginia and Idaho. And Justice Samuel Alito decided to probe a little bit further here about how we're defining men and women and boys and girls before we can decide whether or not it's discriminatory, to make sure that they're separated when it comes to sports, as well as, again, private facilities like bathrooms, locker rooms, shower rooms, etc. Okay, so he wanted to probe a little bit further about this. And if you thought that Ketanji Brown Jackson was the only one who couldn't provide a definition of what a woman is, nope, because the ACL lawyer doubled down on it with Ketanji. So watch this exchange. Let me pull this back up now. This is at about the point where I was told that I was not live. And again, I do apologize for that tech issue. But this is how that exchange between Justice Alito and Attorney Hartnett from the ACLU went yesterday. Here we go.
Is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl, or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl, or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is,
you're not disputing the definition. You refuse to give one. Think about the ignorance and the idiocy of that statement. This is an ACL lawyer arguing before the Supreme Court. We're not taking issue with that definition, but we don't have one. If you don't have one, then you accept the one that they do have, and that has been accepted since the beginning of, time. There are males and there are females, and they are unique and they are different. And they have definitions. And so if you're saying we don't have a definition, but we don't dispute the definition, you are literally just talking in circles. You should be barred from practicing law. You should not be there, ever again, much less, in a courtroom, much less before the Supreme Court. Let me back that up and finish the clip.
we do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense.
See, this is the bullshit vocabulary that they try to literally speak it into existence. Birth sex males. What the flying hell is a birth sex male? That's not a term. It has never been a term. And again, all of human history, not in science, not in medicine, not in healthcare, birth sex males. She's saying, well, and we're talking about birth sex males, as if that's like an accepted term. They're making it up as they go. Ketanji can't tell you what a woman is. This lawyer who wants to let boys participate in girls' events and to dominate their spaces, putting them in grave jeopardy, wants to muddy the waters by saying birth sex males, but they're really females, but they're birth sex males. What? Stop with the made up words. We can't take that crap anymore.
So, according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means.
There's the hammer. That's the hammer dropped by Justice Sam Alito. How can you bring a lawsuit alleging sex discrimination without being able to define sex, without being able to delineate, to tell the difference between biological male and biological female? How can you do it?
For equal protection purposes.
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant.
Do you hear the stammer? Do you hear the stuttering, stammering, blithering, blubbering idiot, left-wing ACLU lawyer? He just pigeonholed her and she knows it. She doesn't know what to do. What is the first rule of being in a hole? Right? If you're in a hole and you want to get out of it, what is rule number one? Stop digging. She wants to stop digging. She wants to not have to talk at all right now, but she's standing before the court, so she has to say something. So she, today, Junior, she does that in response because she doesn't have any answer to that brilliant question posed by Justice Alito.
Basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute.
You are completely unqualified to be before a court. So the Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson can't identify what a woman is. The lawyers representing in the ACLU representing these clients in this case before the court can't tell you what a man or a woman is. Yeah, we're supposed to have some sort of rewriting of all human biological history and human biological present day fact because of somebody's political agenda. I mean, this just, it's so embarrassing and it stinks so high. The good news is, and let me bring this one up for you, according to virtually all coverage of the hearings yesterday, Supreme Court appears to be very, and how could they be otherwise? Notwithstanding the one who should be recused, Ketanji Brown Jackson, because she doesn't know what a woman is, by her own admission, by her own words. Notwithstanding the far left activism of the other two members of the court appointed by Democrat presidents. And let's emphasize that. These are not judges. These are not justices. These are activists wearing black robes to be able to pervert the system of justice. They are not interpreting the Constitution. They're not interpreting precedent law. They are doing things from an activist perspective, and that's it. Okay? So let's get that straight. Ketanji, by the way, do I have Ketanji going off here? Yeah, I do. Let me share this one rather than Riley Gaines put this out there. Cisgender women can compete according to their gender identity. Transgender women cannot, said KJB. Said the woman who doesn't know what a woman is. She said cisgender women, and again, there's another one of those terms, just like birth sex males. What the hell is a cisgender? I'm 58 years old, and until like 2 years ago, I never heard the term cis in anything. There's men and there's women. There's gender. There's sex. There's not cis sex and trans sex. There's men and there's women. Oh, and then there are people with psychological conditions, psychological afflictions, like maybe gender dysphoria, which strikes less than 0.1% of the population, maybe 0.5% of the population. The rest of these people are completely and wholly being abused by influencers in their personal lives, in their families, and maybe online. I digress. Cisgender women can compete according to their gender identity, which means their gender, and transgender women cannot, which means their psychological delusion or their brainwashing, their indoctrination. Identities, as Riley Gaines wrote, identities don't play sports. Bodies do. Does she think we should have categories for other identity factors? Religion, color of skin? Ridiculous. And she is absolutely, and Juanita is also correct as we look at these comments, KJB is so unqualified and an embarrassment to our Supreme Court. Joe Pag, cisgender is not a thing. It's male or female. Pretty simple. Sports aren't about feelings. They're about fairness. Let boys play as boys and girls play as girls. Mixing categories based on identity erases opportunities women fought for decades to secure. Title IX exists for a reason. 100% true. All of that. So now to how did it go yesterday in the court? And that's where I'll bring this back. This is a Breitbart story, but I think it's fairly accurate because this is exactly how the testimony went yesterday. The Supreme Court appeared sympathetic to state laws banning transgender identifying males from playing on female sports teams. The 6-3 conservative majority is expected to release their decision by summer. The Supreme Court notably issued several decisions last year curtailing the transgender activist agenda, including allowing states to ban sex changes for minors, which is, do we even need to have this part of the conversation? Do we need to say the obvious here? That states, I almost feel like states shouldn't be allowed to ban sex changes for minors. States should be required, not allowed, but required to ban sex changes for minors. Because remember that 8-year-old discussion we just had? Allowing children to subject themselves to the horrors of the Nazi experimental labs run by Joseph Mengele might seem to be a bad idea. And that's exactly what these are. There are doctors who have admitted during consultations with people wanting, I'm sorry, not during their consultations, but after consultations with people wanting sex changes, they have admitted in their own conferences that they don't know what they're doing. We're going to figure it out together. How to cut off healthy organs and fashion makeshift pretend organs and attach them and try to make them functioning. They admitted they were experimenting. I've played audio of it. They've admitted they're experimenting on human beings, and particularly on children who want to have sex changes. They're experimenting on them. That's what Mengele did. That's exactly what he did. Bodily mutilating experiments on children to see what would happen. And there is there is a lawsuit before the Supreme Court of the United States, and there was another one, basically saying, let us go Mengele on kids. We're going to experiment on them and see what happens when we cut their breasts off. We're going to see what happens with them when we sew up their vagina and we try to attach a fake phallus that we create by cutting meat away from their forearms and from their calves. And they will stitch together in true Mengele fashion or Frankensteinian fashion. If you want to do that, Dr. Frankenstein built a robotic human with body parts from humans. We're going to create this monstrous thing to see what happens, see how it works. Then we'll do it again later, and we'll practice and we'll experiment on people. That's literally what they're talking about there. I'm sorry. But the court issued those decisions allowing states to ban sex changes for minors, and they should, like I said, require that. It should be something, I think, that's at a federal level. Requiring schools to provide parents opt-outs from LGBTQ propaganda in curriculums. The court also appeared skeptical of Colorado's so-called conversion therapy ban. And this is more of Alito pinning Kathleen Hartnett, the ACLU attorney in that case, back to the point where she was a blubbering idiot. I don't want to go into the specifics of all these cases anymore because I think we made the point. What I do want to do is follow up on the second or the last part that we shared in this article. The court also appeared, the line before that, doggone it. I'm sorry. I want to read that line again. The Supreme Court notably issued several decisions last year, including requiring schools to provide parents opt-outs from LGBTQ plus propaganda in curriculum. Curricula is what it should say. I think there's a poor grammar there. But anyway, I bring that up to bring the story back closer to home now, okay? I don't know if you have seen this. Let me grab the actual copy here because I printed this story and I want to share this with you. This is in a Northeast Ohio school district, and it is staggering. It is disgusting. It is, I can't even describe it. If you're familiar with Libs of TikTok, Libs of TikTok exposes this stuff and has been for a very long time now. And hopefully you're seeing that. Let me double check. I don't trust anything anymore since I was doing 14 minutes of show this morning and didn't find out until then. Thanks to my wife for letting me know, by the way, along with chatters and text messengers. I just wasn't looking at the chat. Anyway, I was talking for 14 minutes and didn't realize that we weren't broadcasting live. So I apologize. I just don't trust any of the tech now. So I got to double check to make sure you can see this on the screen. Okay, I think you can. All right. So this is a post from Libs of TikTok, and this is dated at the 11th. So this is 3 days old. Okay. This is unbelievable. Classroom in Hudson schools. I'm told the principal made the teacher take all of the LGBTQ propaganda posters down in deference to the Supreme Court ruling, by the way. It wasn't optional. Take the crap down. It makes 99% of the students really uncomfortable, and it makes 1% of the students, the LGBTQ, pets and furries and crossers and non-binaries and whatever else is, it makes them feel comfortable. But 99%, it had to come down. So they were ordered to take it down. But according to the report here, one teacher quietly put it back up, and nothing is being done about it. This picture that we're seeing here was taken this month. So that's how we know, you see what they've done? She's draped these rainbow flags over the actual lights, the ceiling lights, so that they shine like rainbows down on the room. Look at the door, safe space for all, with the rainbow transy looking thing or whatever. And what's really funny is what else is on that door? A little sign about mental illness. I can't read that when it's too small. But a sign about mental illness. I'd like to zoom that up, maybe do it on another time. But you can see it's all over the room. And so this teacher basically ignored the law. The teacher must be fired immediately. Clearly, she cares more about her activism than teaching students, no doubt. How to keep woke teaching. Now, that's just kind of funny. That is very funny. And this is very, very true. Anybody that discusses sex with kindergartners is a predator, not a teacher. So I'm just going to let you stare at this for a moment while I read you some of the details of this story in an article written by Harper Slayton. An anonymous tipster claimed, I'm told the principal made the teacher take all of the LGBTQ propaganda posters down, but she quietly put it back up and nothing is being done. This must be removed immediately. The message also provided the principal's email address, which, boy, that would be terrible if you got that. And can we get you that? Oh, it is there. I forgot. Yeah, look at that. I'll highlight it for you. It's really awful if you actually saw the principal of this Hudson Schools email address and let this principal know what you thought about it. Hudson Schools, located in Summit County, serves about 4,500 students. The district falls within District 28, represented by, shockingly, Representative Casey Weinstein, one of the most woke, left-wing pieces of human flotsam and jetsam that I've ever seen, who has been very vocal on social media, social issues and social media in support of LGBTQ rights. And that would mean, by definition, stripping away the rights of everybody else. In a 2022 Facebook post, Casey Weinstein stated, given all the attacks LGBTQ kids are facing from state houses across the country, I think you misspelled protecting them from mutilation, you stupid son of a Democrat. I feel like it's a great day to say, and it went on to affirm his stance in solidarity with LGBTQ youth and butchering their bodies. More recently, in a June 2024 post, Casey Weinstein wrote, things that don't belong in our public school classrooms. 1, hungry kids going without food. 2, the 10 Commandments. If that doesn't tell you who this guy is and what the movement is all about, Libs of TikTok's post garnered over 200 likes and 60 reposts within hours, with replies calling to defund the school, expressing outrage, firing the principal. Hudson schools did not immediately respond to requests for comments on the allegations or the declarations. Principal Mark Miller's office also declined to comment, at least to the media. Maybe you'll have better luck. What was that email address again? Oh, yeah, there it is. millerm@hudson.k12.oh.us. Yeah, maybe you'll have better luck getting him to comment to you. The incident reflects broader national tensions over LGBTQ activism in schools, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact in the conversation of yesterday's Supreme Court hearing, I think is notable. And the fact that this is, if it's happening in one school in Northeast Ohio, you know damn well it's happening in many schools in Northeast Ohio. What's going on in that Hudson classroom is happening everywhere. I have no doubt of that. And if it's happening in many schools in Northeast Ohio, it is clearly happening in many schools across the rest of Ohio and across the country. So this is still a massive, massive issue. So Ketanji sits in judgment as a justice on the Supreme Court bench, listening to people discuss how stopping boys from being in girls' sports and stopping men from being in women's sports and locker rooms, shower rooms, bathrooms, and so on and so forth is discriminatory. It's sex discrimination, yet she can't define woman. You cannot define woman. You cannot tell the difference between the sexes. How are you sitting in judgment of sexual discrimination? That's a question that's over my pay grade, apparently. I can't figure it out. Maybe this guy can. Let's go into the war room and let's bring him in. And believe it or not, for the first time in 3 attempted appearances, and emphasis on the word appearances, so you can see him and not just hear his wisdom. Look at this. Kirsanow figured out his camera. Peter Kirsanow, member of the United States.
Actually, Bob, I was just trying to spare everybody the shock of first thing in the morning seeing this face. It's kind of scary.
Be welcome, my friend. Thanks for coming on. So you're doing this by cell phone, right?
No, I'm doing it on my laptop, which is
Oh,
going to
you
be a
did
little
get
bit
it fixed.
I've got a new one. I hope I don't have any glitches.
Beautiful. Last night, Pete and I were monkeying around with this and, testing it out on his cell phone because he said his regular setup was simply still not working for whatever reason.
That setup was at my office, and we had a different camera on there that didn't work we use it for our Zoom. But anyway, I won't bore you with the details. But anyway,
no, it's okay. It's actually kind of fun, and I'm glad you got this done, Pete, because it is important to see you. By the way, is there any way you could tip that? I was just about to ask you to center yourself up a little bit. Beautiful. There you go. So Pete, I wanted to start here. I know you and I we're going to talk a little bit today, and we still will, about anarchy and about the violence in the streets and what is happening right now in Minneapolis and across the country. But then I remembered you are a Supreme Court scholar, and you have testified before at least 3, right? 3 Supreme Court, 5?
Yeah.
Holy crap. My mistake. 5 Supreme Court justice confirmation hearings, which is extraordinary. So if we don't talk about the goings on at the Supreme Court, that would be a huge miss by me. So Peter, and for those who don't know, Peter Kirsanow is a member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. You had a civil rights attorney yesterday representing somebody from the ACLU representing one of the 2 clients in these 2 cases, arguing before a woman, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who doesn't know what a woman is, arguing and saying she too doesn't know what a woman is. When questioned by Sam Alito, could not and would not define sex and therefore have to delineate between males and females. Peter, this looks like it's a circus sideshow. You got a justice who should be recusing herself because she admits she doesn't know what one of the sexes is. And in that case, how can she determine sexual discrimination? And you've got a lawyer representing clients who said she also, and they refuse to identify sex as well. What do you see in here, Pete?
I see a combination of an Orwell and it's a Orwell novel. It's just stunning. If you can't define sex, then you can't define sex discrimination. And this is one of the plainest cases imaginable. It distresses me that it has gotten to the Supreme Court where we have to have an argument about what a man and a woman is, something that we've known since man had a brain and could figure things out. So I think that it's pretty clear which way, at least from the tenor of the argument, which way the justices will be going. I think that obviously they're going to uphold common sense, which is reflected in the law. And this is not sex discrimination as had been defined in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We've had hearings at the Civil Rights Commission related to this issue. They are the most absurd, you get some of the most absurd testimony, and no disrespect to any of the witnesses, many of whom have very, faithfully held beliefs. But nonetheless, this is something that is relatively clear to most people. And, you've seen it, Bob. We both were athletes in the past. Not that you need to be an athlete. You look at your kids when they've been participating in sports, you look at common sense and history, and you can see very clearly that, give you an example, Florence Griffith Joyner ran the 100-yard dash and 100-meter dash in 9.5 and 10.5 respectively. Phenomenal speeds for a woman, the fastest woman on earth. In the year that she ran those record-breaking times, there were 500 boys in Texas alone who could run faster than that. That just shows you right there what the problem is, and weightlifting, almost everything. So I think this is going to be a pretty quick and easy one. I will like to see what Ketanji Brown Jackson writes in an opinion. She's got to write, I think almost is impelled to write a dissent. So who knows? I may be surprised. She may join the majority. But
I really want to read it, though. You remember one of her previous decisions in which she actually typed out, like she was on Facebook or something. She typed ... wait for it ... She typed like a teenager, in a text message or like I said, on a social media post in an actual Supreme Court decision or opinion rather.
Right. That's embarrassing. Amy Coney Barrett, in fact, indicated it was embarrassing. It's read more like a novel or something, not a Supreme Court decision. But that's the kind of approach that you almost have to take when you're addressing a matter such as this. This is not a serious matter. All due respect, the discrimination on the basis of sex is serious. This is not discrimination on the basis of sex. And this is the most rational basis. It frankly exceeds the rational basis test. There is a compelling state interest in separating, at least in terms of athletics, men and women, because for at least as long as man and women have been alive, we've understood there's a profound physiological difference that mandates having separate categories for athletics.
Yeah, and Pete, great example, by the way, with FloJo. I remember that, and I remember learning about 500 high school age boys in Texas, which means thousands and thousands of young boys are faster than the fastest woman in the world. And it's not just about speed. Obviously, it's about lung capacity. It's about muscle density. It's about bone density. It's about all of these things that just make males physically superior to women. And nobody likes to think about that because we're all supposed to be equal. And we are equal in terms of our rights, but we are not equal in terms of what our capabilities are physically and biologically. Just as males could probably never handle having to push a human being out of their body, and women handle that because their bodies were built for that, we're different. And we're allowed to be different. Sorry to go back to an old time, but separate but equal is okay when it comes to sports. And equal opportunities is exactly what Title IX was all about. Pete, Title IX, as I understand it, has probably done more for women's rights and opportunities than any other law that we have passed, I don't know, maybe ever, other than maybe voting rights for women.
Right. I've been on the Civil Rights Commission now for 25 years, almost 25 years, and the trajectory you've seen as a result of Title IX just in that period. This has been last 25 years have been relatively recent in terms of the litigation, the jurisprudence with respect to sex discrimination. Yet nonetheless, there's been an incredible increase, predominantly as a result of Title IX, in women's participation in sports, and it has ancillary effects also. So in terms of quality of the sexes, in terms of rights, without compromising distinctions, clear distinctions on whether it's a compelling state interest test or a rational basis test for having certain types of categories, it's done significant good for the prospect of women in almost every endeavor. But, you've got to have some common sense here. And I'm afraid that for political reasons, and sometimes, well, actually, mainly for ideological reasons, but there is a political component to it. There's been a movement on the left to almost equate males and females as if there are no differences whatsoever. We see it with respect to bathroom controversies. I think we're going through, I think it was Robert Heinlein, the science fiction writer, called a certain period during the scope of his novels the crazy years. And I think that maybe we're going through something similar to that, the crazy years. And it's going to take a while, probably a couple of decades to get out of it, but we'll emerge at the other end being better for it. And people have an understanding of why you have these differences. And maybe this Supreme Court case will be one of the, I don't know, one of the catapults for doing something like that.
Pete, under what basis or on what basis can a judge or a justice be forced to recuse themselves from a case? Because
Well,
again,
there's a host of
going back to Ketanji, right? I mean, how she can't. I'm surprised that Chief Justice Roberts didn't say something about it, and I don't know what the protocol is here. She should not be.
You mean based on saying that she didn't know what a woman was?
Yeah. If she can't tell what a woman is, how can you
Yeah.
sit through a judgment of women and male issues and
Right.
and discrimination based on those?
I think, there are certain reasons why a judge must recuse themselves, and they usually have to deal with things like conflict of interest. You've got a financial interest or another interest in the outcome of the litigation. You may have represented, for example, before you became a justice, one of the litigants to the case, something of that nature. But when you've stated something like that, unless you have shown a predetermined result, and I'm not sure that saying you don't know what a woman is will suggest a predetermined result for the particular case at hand. So I doubt that, I don't know. I haven't looked at the pleadings in the case or anything of that nature. I doubt there was any kind of a motion made to have her recuse herself, but I don't think that qualifies.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just, to me, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a metaphor here, another example. But if you openly express your ignorance of something, and then you are asked to express wisdom on that subject that you have decided was, that you didn't have any information on, or you were ignorant of, I just feel like that's a travesty.
And that makes good sense, Bob. But then you have to ask yourself, almost every justice should have ignorance on many of the facts with respect to cases that come before it. That's why you have a briefing. That's why I have oral arguments. You can educate them on it. Your example with respect to Ketanji Brown Jackson admittedly is different, but still, it's not the same as a conflict of interest, or if she were to say, I don't believe in women, or I don't believe men exist. Something like that is a little bit different from saying, I don't know the difference between the two.
Yeah, I suppose. But I think it's a difference without a distinction, or a distinction without a difference. Maybe I don't know which way.
Welcome to the law.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody was, if Michael Vick was brought up before Ketanji Brown Jackson on his dogfighting charges, and she had said in her confirmation hearing she don't know what a dog is, she can't give a definition of dog. Should she hear that case? And what if she was not? And that might have been a silly example. I'm just trying to think of something where somebody can say something that is that obtuse about something that is so obvious, and then expect her to be fair and impartial as a jurist on a case like that. I'm trying to figure out, what if this was not a Supreme Court panel of 9 justices? What if this was just a courtroom, a lawsuit brought on this basis, and she was the only judge, and she has declared for the world to hear that she doesn't know what a woman is, or cannot give a definition of woman because she's not and that second part of her statement is important, because I'm not a biologist. I don't know what a woman is. Would that judge do you think they would have made a motion to recuse her from that case if these cases brought before the full court were only before her? She would have to be.
It's conceivable, but I think it's unlikely, Bob, because the whole purpose of having hearings, briefings, and things of that nature is to educate the judge purportedly on things that they don't know, give them, background as to the facts and all of those things. Now, if someone says, I don't know what a woman is, that might indicate such idiocy that
not knowing the facts of a case is different than not knowing basic human biology and basic, knowledge that every child has. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, it's one thing that's what a trial is for, to present to the judge facts of the case of which they were previously ignorant. They did not know these things. Okay, I get that. But this is one of those, suppositions where you have to assume and suppose that the judge is aware of basic things like there are men and there are women and we know what they are, and that an adult human female is what a woman is, an adult human female with XX chromosomes and so forth. I don't know. So
Well, if there is any indication that by saying she doesn't know what a woman is, that she's got some type of prejudice, or she couldn't be convinced or educated as to that, then there might be a basis for recusal or a motion to disqualify or recuse.
Well, clearly that is the case, right, Pete? I mean, let's hear it again, because you know what, Marsha Blackburn's response to her statement clarified it. Pete, let's watch and listen to this again super quick because it's obviously a short clip. But listen to not only what KBJ said, but what Marsha Blackburn said in response.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
That's the key line right there. Because the definition of the word woman is so controversial to you, you obviously have a bias here. That's why you can't identify what you are and what I am and what adult human females are. It's a very clear reference by the senator there that KJB, has a bias. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, I think you make a good point that it may demonstrate that she refuses to acknowledge something that's plainly evident, and as a result, that indicates that she's biased and can't consider a case involving the distinction between the sexes in a fair manner. I guess I don't see who knows, maybe there was a motion made at some point, but I doubt it. And I still
I'm just
think
surprised
that
it's not a talking point in the press. You know what I mean? I'm just surprised it's not a talking point in the press.
Oh, no, you're not, Bob.
No,
you're not. You're not surprised. I know you, Bob. You're not surprised at anything the press does that has left
even in the conservative, even in the conservative media. I mean, I'm not hearing anybody banging that drum, and it was the first thing that jumped out at me. It's a case alleging sexual discrimination against quote unquote trans women and trans girls. You have to be able to know what a man and a woman is to determine sexual discrimination and whether or not it exists. So that's just that jumped out at me. We don't have to beat it to death any longer. All right, Pete. So I do want to dive into the rest of this now. And last week, obviously, we had a brief conversation over the shooting death of Renee Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And by now, so much more information and so much more video from cell phone cameras showing different angles of her, not only sitting blocking traffic perpendicular with her vehicle to the flow of traffic, so she could obstruct ICE operations, along with a whole lot of other people doing the same thing. She's beeping her horn and dancing her in the seat of her SUV to the horn and just creating this chaos. And then, of course, when they finally come to remove her from the vehicles, when, of course, her partner from outside the SUV said, "Drive, baby, drive." And she took it from reverse, dropped it down into drive, an officer standing directly in front of her, and then the brake lights go off and she floors it and hits him and gets shot for it. So we all know the reality, not just the first angles in which left-wing zealots like Jacob Fry and Tim Walz and others said that this was a stone cold murder. Now that we know everything else, Peter, and the facts are plain as day, they're still rioting. Minneapolis is now officially in George Floyd 2.0 territory here. It's full anarchy on the streets. They are swarming agents. They're swarming police officers. And I'm calling it anarchy for a reason. When there is no order, when there is no leadership, when there is no authority recognized by the masses, you have anarchy. And that is happening in a major American city right now. And probably not only that one. Pete, what do we do to regain control?
Well, first of all, as you indicated, I think much of this is performative. Not that they don't necessarily believe, or a large contingent of them believe that something bad happened, But I think it's performative because they're trying to turn this into another George Floyd moment, a springboard for political solidarity and increasing support for the Democratic Party. That's pretty clear when you see Waltz and Jacob Fry and all these others come up and make absurd statements and arguments. We saw the problem they've got is we've got video, and the video was as plain as day, and yet even the media is still trying to convince us that we didn't see what we saw. It's not working. The dog won't hunt, as they say. But I think it's imperative for them. Let's face it. For years now, the left has had nothing but really absurdity. And that's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much of one, in order to promote their progressive cause. Just absurd arguments. And they try to seize upon something that's visceral every single time they get a chance to use as a springboard for getting more and more support. And I think it's hurting them. I mean, they're losing in terms of the polling. You look at polls over the last 10 years, the trajectory is such that I think the progressive enterprise is failing dramatically, especially when you consider that they've got control of almost every cultural institution. They've got control of the schools, the media, and everything else. Yet, again, they can't persuade people. So they seize upon something like this, twist it, distort it to make it seem as if it's something different than what it was in order to rally the troops and get those who are on the periphery to join their cause. So I think this is something most people, they've seen it. They understand what's going on. They're not biting on that. And I think it hurts, in fact, the progressive cause. And it makes the Fries and Waltzes and others look like complete idiots.
You said that, they're performers. It looks performative to you, and I agree to a large extent. Maybe some of them do believe the cause, but they're still pretty much performing. What about the paid aspect of this?
Yeah.
Because they're investigating that. In fact, I think I might have a story about trying to dig into where the money is coming from, because so many of these individuals, they've actually been caught on man on the street interviews, the citizen journalists that are out there doing things like Nick Shirley, but they've actually been talking about they're on the clock and that they're getting paid. How important is it to find out where that money is coming from? Because this is then, and I don't know how the law works or how it reads, but intentional creation of lawlessness, paying people to go out there and interfere. It's almost conspiracy to commit insurrection. I don't know how it would have to be worded, but if they can find out that, who's writing the checks and paying these people to go out there and obstruct and impede law enforcement activities, I think there ought to be a pretty strong case brought there. Can you
There
explain?
might be, if not from a tort perspective, sometimes there could be a conspiracy perspective in terms of breaking the law. But, I think it's not difficult to find out where the money's coming from. It's the source types groups. They're trying to foment some type of civil unrest or insurrection. So again, they can usher in the laws that they want, their excuses for making certain types of laws or initiating certain types of public policies. But some of the examination that I've seen indicates that some of the funding for this and almost any other kind of riot or insurrection comes from overseas, from China and some of our adversaries. Iran was supposedly involved in it at some point. Back in the old days, of course, it was the Soviet Union, and I'm sure that Russia may be involved, although they're involved in a war and they're pleading poverty on a number of fronts, but nonetheless, they'd like to see America fall. So I think it's important to see where it came from, because if someone's trying to undermine the United States of America, I would hope that the federal government would be interested in something of that nature. For a lot of people who've grown up K through 12 in our college system, it doesn't require anybody to support them. I mean, they are true believers. They've been instructed about this for the last 12 to 14 years in their schools, and you see some of the nuttiness. It defies rationality, with all due respect. There are some who sincerely believe this and have come to certain conclusions on their own merit, but there are a whole lot of them, and I think they've been, I hate to use the term brainwashed, but that's the best way of describing it.
I'm going to share this, Pete, because like I said, I thought I had an article, and I do, kind of in support of what we're talking about right now. Let's see if we can pull this up. This is actually an article from the Epoch Times, but it was shared by Liberty Daily. Marxist network behind pro-Maduro and anti-ICE protests facing congressional scrutiny. This is what I'm talking about here. One of the same network of groups that fueled the anti-Israel protests and the June 2025 LA riots are organizing the pro-Maduro and anti-ICE protests around the country. One of those groups, Answer Coalition, declared on social media an emergency day of action on January 3rd. And by the way, I've got another story here that says nationwide protests planned over the Renee Good shooting for this coming Saturday. And so, again, these coalition's national director, Brian Becker, after taking part in the New York protest, appeared in a segment on Chinese state media, a registered foreign agent with the Department of Justice to condemn the U.S. move. And that's on the Maduro side of things here. But the point is, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, another group in this network, shared a picture, a poster of Donald Trump holding cash in one hand and oil in the other, suggesting this is just stealing Venezuelan oil by deposing Maduro. My point is, these groups, and I'm glad they're being investigated by Congress, they're tied to communist China. They're tied to Marxist socialist organizations whose goal, and Pete, not just their hinted goal, but their stated goal is to destabilize the United States, to create enough chaos and disorder and division so that the United States will literally tear itself apart. And their globalist communist dreams can become fulfilled when the U.S. crumbles. Isn't it up to virtually every lawmaker to want to stop that? Because
I think so, but remember, we've got a lot of
lawmaker.
Yeah, we've got a lot of true believers out there, as you know, Bob. You look at some of these Democrats, especially at the state level, but also at the federal level, and look at the Ilhan Omars and folks of that nature. These guys, it's not an exaggeration to say they hate the United States of America, because if you ask them, what about the United States of America do you love? They really can't point to a whole lot, but they can list a litany of things that they dislike or hate about America. They are socialists in the main, if not outright communists. They hate the culture of the United States of America, and they would not be opposed to overthrowing the United States as it currently exists. That's not an exaggeration. They've pretty much articulated just that every single chance they get. So there's a lot of money behind these organizations. There are bad actors, state actors behind this, as I indicated. China, less so now Russia, but still they probably still have a hand in it. Iran and other bad actors. There's a lot of money behind this. But don't discount, the fact that there are true believers in the United States of America, and also folks that are a little bit weak-minded and can be easily influenced, and folks for whom this is, as Edward Banfield said, riding for fun and profit. There are a lot of folks that do that kind of thing. So almost everyone who has a grievance can be, gotten into this movement and do these kinds of things. It's difficult to say that we're at a critical juncture here in the United States, because it seems like we're always at a juncture. It just evolves from point to point. But the problem for the left is, I think that they are losing their resonance. The media, because of its proliferation, because of all the websites we've got, all of the social media we have, they don't control the narrative the way they used to, and they're very frustrated by it. And I think that's going to promote more and more of these performative displays, as we see after the George Floyd riot and after the Minneapolis shooting.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt it will. And the biggest downfall, disadvantage, if you will, in their efforts, Peter, and tell me if you agree with this, is Renee Good's white. It's a white woman. It's really, 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 really hard for them to go as all out in outrage and in riot mode over the shooting of a white woman who tried to run down an ICE agent. If she had been black, there would be murals and statues planned just right next to the George Floyd ones. Doesn't matter what she was doing. It wouldn't matter. It kind of doesn't now. The fact that she's gay, she's a lesbian and has a quote unquote wife, is at least a little bit, because they have another marginalized group though that they can rally around, as if that somehow matters. But the fact that Renee Good is white is a big hindrance to their efforts, to create their.
The idea is they've got to have something consistent with the narrative. George Floyd was perfect for them, okay? They could have lied to the facts because that shooting was perfect for the litany that they had been fomenting, that they had been imposing on the United States of America, our culture, that somehow anytime there's a officer-involved shooting of a black man that has something to do with race. It's the oppression of blacks historically. It has something to do with that. But this doesn't really have any kind of historical basis, so they can't beat that drum as vigorously as they did for George Floyd. And believe me, as you know, they're looking for that kind of incident to spark, a revolution may be a little too strong of a word, but not for them. That's what they truly believe in. They want anarchy in the streets so they can impose their agenda on the rest of us. And that sounds conspiratorial, but unfortunately, we've seen that's precisely what's going on. And I will tell you, when you get down into the weeds, if you're doing this kind of work with respect to civil rights, you see the true believers, and it's for real. And there's a lot of money behind that.
Pete, President Trump said something yesterday about defunding all sanctuary cities. He said they're disgusting, they're anti-American, they're this, that, and the other. And they're also dangerous. Tom Homan has pointed this out many, many times. If you don't want us in your streets, ICE meaning ICE, if you don't want us in your streets and having to find the people that we're looking. In fact, Pete, we should probably do this too. Let me share this super quick, because this is what Tom Homan is talking about here. People need to understand they're not out there just looking for gardeners and dishwashers and nannies from Mexico. They're out there going after some very, very dangerous people. Right. And I want to show this. The worst of the worst that they have found in Minnesota, that they're seeking and that they have found. I had a graphic here that shows kind of a grid of a dozen or more. Oh, here, I think this is it. It was Breitbart. Yeah. Look at this, Peter. These are the people that the left is trying to protect and to keep in the cities. Look at some of these people, and I'll just read a couple of the descriptions of these individuals. We're talking
Bob, see, this is racist. You put up those photos. I don't see any white faces there. This is really racist. We better not talk about this.
Well, you nailed it. You did, Pete. You're exactly right. This is why these people are being protected. But it's a sobering list of killers and child rapists from all over the world arrested just in Minnesota during their operations. The list, complete with headshots and criminal biographies, was released to Fox News, blah, blah, blah. But it listed some of the most egregious crimes that can be committed. There's Caroline Levitt talking about it. Bill Malugin produced that list of numerous convicted child rapists, sodomizers, 10 convicted killers. All right, so what's the point of this? Why am I bringing this part up? Two reasons. One, Pete, just to let everybody know how and we're on the internet now and we're unfiltered, so batshit crazy it is for these people to want the communities to have these people remain in it, and that ICE, the guys with badges and who are trying to uphold the law, out. So they want, Jacob Fry said, get the F out of Minneapolis. We want these rapists, child molesters, child abusers, killers, and so on and so forth to be left alone here. So that's point number one. And point number two, I want you to respond to, Pete, is what Tom Homan said. It's like, when we're coming in for people like that, if your law enforcement officers would do their jobs and hold them for us, we'll come into your jail, we'll take them into custody, and we'll be on our way. But since you're a sanctuary city, and you refuse to do that, we've got to go find them where they are in the communities. And while we're looking for them, if we encounter other illegals, because they generally tend to congregate, illegals, particularly from the same nationalities, when we discover them, we're taking them too. And that's what's leading to, all of these anti-ICE operations and the radical things that they're doing. So, Pete, give me your thoughts on both those things. Number one, the idea that they want to keep the actual violent criminals living among them to prey upon them. And number two, that all they have to do, if they don't want the criminals there, is stop the declaration of sanctuary city status, let ICE come in and get them and leave, and then we wouldn't have all of these confrontations in the streets.
There are two profound reasons why the left politically wants no enforcement of the immigration laws, even when it comes to something as egregious as illegal immigrants who've committed horrific crimes. For one is, it's part of their, well, let me start with the political one, which is probably the most important. And this is a raw political calculation on the part of the left. They want as many bodies as possible within their jurisdiction to increase the electoral impact that they have. The more people you have in a particular jurisdiction, I've written about this a number of times, National Review and other places, they want to increase the number of electoral votes they get, and that's a function of population. So they don't mind having the millions coming in. In fact, that's part of their enterprise. So there's that political perspective. And also, aside from the electoral count, is they eventually hope that these people vote. But they have an advantage. Even if these people never vote, the fact that they are there and they be counted in the census goes to how many representatives that liberal state, a Minnesota or Illinois or all these other sanctuary states, how many electoral votes they have, how many representatives they have. So that's huge, and they're not going to deviate from that because they're losing. If you look at the stats on this, over the last 35 years, the Democratic Party has seen a significant decline in citizen support, in the United States citizen support. So they've got to import support from other nations. Whether or not they become citizens or not is immaterial to them. So, and I can't remember what the second point I was going to make, but that's the most important one. I think that the left is always going to be protecting illegal immigrants, no matter if they're criminals or not. It's incredible. We can't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. We didn't grow up with this, but the left, as you've seen in polling, and the Democrats have been very concerned about this. James Carville's been talking about this. Other politicals have been talking about this. They now have, the last poll I saw was about 2 or 3 weeks ago on Real Clear Politics. Democratic Party has an 18% approval rating. 18%. That's devastating. They're not going to have electoral advantages except in certain discrete pockets of inner cities or, hyper blue areas like Minneapolis. They're not going to have support unless they get more people to come in because, my goodness, 18%, that's devastating to any enterprise, political enterprise. So we're going to be seeing this for quite some time. I don't think they're ever going to deviate it. And then, as I said, there are the true believers who actually believe in this aside from the political imperative.
The second part, Pete, was the sanctuary city status of this, because wouldn't it make sense if they want to keep their political advantage, their electoral advantage, like you said, the more people they have and so on and so forth, wouldn't it make sense to declassify their sanctuary city status? Because according to what Holman is saying, and I believe him, they're going after the worst of the worst. If they just let them take the worst of the worst, actually have law enforcement there, do their jobs. When there's detainers issued for these individuals, hold them and let them come and go. That way their illegal population of, non-really violent criminals, those who are criminal only by their presence here, will remain largely undisturbed if they just let them take the really
Yeah,
bad
but you got true believers. Yeah, you look at Jacob Fry's, or like an Ilhan Omar is the best example. These are true believers. Many of them, and I'm not saying this applies to Jacob Fry, and I don't know to whom it applies, other than Ilhan Omar and the Rashida Tlaibs of the world, they hate the United States of America, and they'll do anything they can to undermine it. And this is one of the things they do to undermine it. So I don't, their ideological scope has been so perverted for a lot of them that I think that they're perfectly fine with this. They don't even have to get a political advantage out of it. They just see that historically, and you've seen these folks for years now, they think historically America has been the font of evil, and that punishing America is the thing to do because of all the things it's done historically.
I don't disagree with that at all. What about the original question of sanctuary cities being defunded? Trump said something, it was yesterday or Monday. He said, we're going to defund. Now, he can't do that, of course, because it's up to Congress to decide where the money goes and how it goes. But this is what he wants Mike Johnson and the Congress to do. Is that possible? And do you think this is something?
I think it's possible, provided there's no form of discrimination, unlawful discrimination. But, if there's a lot of strings that are attached to federal funding. You don't get block grants unless you do A, B, and C. And I think that should be applied. If you're not going to comply with federal law, why should you be getting federal benefits? I think that's pretty simple. I think most people would agree with that. And to the extent in any discrete circumstance, the funds that are going to the city are a function of a certain piece of legislation, I think it's incumbent upon Republicans in Congress to take a look at that and maybe repeal that legislation or amend the legislation so they don't get the advantage of continuing to flout federal law, harming the United States of America, promoting the interests a lot of times of our adversaries. I don't just mean the Democratic Party, I mean our foreign adversaries. They shouldn't be getting funding for that. So, and I think most Americans would agree with that. We don't want funding removed from things that we approve, such as child services or something like that. But we don't want we don't want the Jacob Fries and the Ilhan Omars and the others to be capitalizing politically off of our dollars, using our money to promote their enterprises and to be able, again, wave the bloody shirt.
Pete, twice now you've talked about these people just hating America, and I completely agree. And I'm wondering if that's not just the only reason why the video that you and I both agree is our favorite video of the week and maybe of the year so far. I'm wondering, because I mean, literally,
I know what you're going to talk about, Bob.
Yeah, and we're going to enjoy it together. I'm going to play it for everybody, and but literally, Pete, as we watch this, I'm trying to figure out why they turned on this guy. And the only thing I can see that makes him different is he's carrying an American flag instead of an ICE flag.
Yeah.
And so they're stalking him and hunting him until finally they realize they hunted the wrong prey, because when they when they moved in for the kill, holy goodness, let us all enjoy this this once again. Where is the audio portion of that? Hold on a second. Oh, there it is down there. Okay.
What's it like to find a pedophile shit, bro?
This is a good one. I'm up here. Ooh.
Hey, guys.
You have to have a heart of stone not to laugh at that. Sorry. That was hilarious. You had there, as everyone saw, you had a guy knock out 4 separate individuals, but 5 overall, because the guy in the red coat just couldn't figure out what. But this was the ultimate FAFO circumstance. I loved it. I circulated to about 5,000 of my closest friends. Everyone loved it without exception. And, it's kind of a distillation of almost every conservative versus liberal conflict. They're tough. They talk a good game until it's time to put the rubber where the rubber meets the road.
I don't know, man. When I saw that, first of all, again, I don't know what he said or what was said prior to that made them all try to harass him and blare that thing into his ear. And literally, they were assaulting him. You can assault somebody without touching him. Yeah, we don't even know what it was, but it was just the presence of the American flag.
Yeah, the only he let the flag hit the ground. I think maybe she should have protected the flag a little bit more if he could have. But I'm not going to quibble about that.
Yeah, no. And what's weird about it though, Pete, when I first saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, how many people he knocked out and what's the reason and everything else. But then my second thought is why do I get in my head cursing out on the quad on a Saturday night at Cornell vibes?
I disavow anything like I don't resemble that remark.
I'm just picturing Pete having himself a night. All right, who wants some? You can have some, and you can have some. But go ahead.
Well, I think that this is the ultimate FAFO circumstance. I mean, I think that was what was on the video also when it was replayed different places. And these guys, they have a sense that because the media supports them, they've never heard a discouraging word from almost any institution, whether it be their teachers in high school, college, all of the woke enterprises that define our culture. And they think they can get away with this kind of stuff with impunity, and everybody supports them. And then they find out that that's not the case. And more importantly, they find out that they're all puffed up and think they're the strong ones because they've never been told otherwise when, folks out there who actually do the real work, who actually fight our battles, who actually enforce our laws, they may have a different perspective and they got a little bit more muscle.
Yeah. Pete, last thing I want to talk to you about this morning is the Somali problem. We've got a Somali problem. They are now essentially becoming roving gangs of violent actors. And I'm trying to be politically correct here. There are more and more people basically saying the Somali pirates, which is kind of what they are by nature, have brought their theft and their plundering and looting, from the seas to the cities. And they are now victimizing people at extraordinary rates. And I'm not just talking about the graft. I'm not just talking about the fraud and the hundreds of millions and hundreds of billions of dollars collectively across states. As President Trump has talked about, we're talking about them now because people are going out there and exposing them, and citizen journalists are bringing cameras. They're going out there and committing just all kinds of violent acts. They are striking back. And I was watching some commentary on Fox, and I can't remember who it was, Pete, who was talking about the fact that these people came to the United States from what President Trump not so lovingly called a shithole country, which is what it is. They came here looking for help and got help and have proceeded to reward or to say thank you for that assistance by stealing more of our money, to the point where 86% of Somali families with children are on welfare. And 10 years into being in the United States, have done nothing to improve their lot in life to the point where they can pay their own way. 81% of them are still on welfare after 10 years. And now they're out there rewarding, or I'm sorry, paying gratitude for the American people's largesse by stealing more in the terms of the fraud, and now by committing more violent acts as well. So there are some rumblings now, at least in the cities and in the online communities, to tell Congress we need massive not only deportation, but denaturalization. Any of them who came here and got citizenship status should have it revoked, and they should be pushed out of here because of what the collective Somali community is doing. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree entirely. The 81% figure is astonishing. I've seen that. I've seen that $800 million has been sent back to Somalia, most of which dollars can be traced to welfare benefits that they receive. They're getting welfare and remitting it back to Somalia. Somalia has a significant terrorist contingent in there, you've seen it in movies and popular media. But more importantly, what contributions are the majority? I'm not trying to paint a broad brush of Somalians, but what we've seen is that there are a lot of illegal immigrants among that cohort, and there is no reason why ICE shouldn't be in that jurisdiction. When you see the fraud that's been perpetrated, we should be looking into those things, but they're trying, as usual, to put up the shield of race or race discrimination and saying that they are being singled out on the basis of race or national origin. Again, we've seen this movie too many times to keep replaying it and allowing them to continue to replay that. And I think one of the benefits, one of the advantages of having Donald Trump in office is he doesn't play that game. There used to be a show in Living Color where they had this clown say, "Homie, don't play that game." Donald Trump don't play that game. And I think that's one of the clarifying aspects of this administration. So Tom Homan, whose picture should be all along the border, pasted up on the border wall, He's not going to play that game. He's going to do what's necessary. But the Democrats will continue to try to protect because they need the bodies, they need the support, and they need a wedge. They need to be saying Republicans bad because they're deporting people of color.
Yeah, I've added to the screen, Pete, what was learned yesterday that the administration says they are ending deportation protections for some. That's different than saying denaturalization shall begin. But this ending of some of the temporary protected status affects hundreds of people who are a small subset of immigrants living in the United States with those TPS protections. Comes during the crackdown in Minneapolis, where many native Somalis live, and street protests have intensified since the ICE actions, obviously. So want to bring it closer to home here, Pete, and we did this a little bit last week too, but as you know, Columbus, Ohio is the second largest concentration of, a second largest enclave, if you will, of Somalis in the United States. And the same type of rackets that are being run in Minnesota are being run there as well. I don't know if ending TPS for these people is enough. Do we need to begin widespread denaturalization unless people can prove that they are contributing to the community that has welcomed them and has given them everything that they did not have in Somalia? Could we have rapid fire, hearings? What is your status? Where are you employed? Prove that, and so forth. And if you're a contributing member of society, you stay. If you're not, you're denaturalized and you're out.
From an administrative perspective, it could be done, but from a political perspective, even with Trump as president and Republicans, that's a little bit of a heavy lift, because it'll, in the minds, and not just in their minds, but in the practice of the media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, they're going to use something like that to say that, again, Republican Party is racist, they're anti-Somali, they're anti-immigrant, they're all these different things, as opposed to being pro-law enforcement, making sure that we protect American resources and they're not the subject of just widespread fraud. It is an abomination that the state of Minnesota, the city of Minneapolis permitted this, and not just permitted, but assisted in the defrauding of the rest of their citizens by the Somalis. So many different politicians were involved in this. And you look at, and I can't remember his name, but the Attorney General for Minnesota, Keith Ellison. I mean, these folks, they've gone to these communities and said, basically, give me your contributions and I'm going to protect you. And we're getting fleeced. Not just the citizens of Minnesota, but all of the United States of America is getting fleeced, and we should not permit this. It should not be an example. Well, bottom line is, it should not be done. It's against the law. It's unfair. It's an abomination, and we shouldn't be allowing this to happen as an instruction to our kids.
I'm tired of we can't do anything or say anything about it because we're going to be called racist. I'm anti-Somali because of what they do, not because of what they look like. I'm anti-Somali because they are a very, very, this doesn't mean every member, but they are very, very violent people who are, look, Peter, they come here with nothing. They stay here long enough to be driving Mercedes. And this is something that one of the lawmakers yesterday was talking about. They're in Minnesota. They're driving luxury cars, and yet they're reporting no income and they're on welfare. How? Because these are the grifters. These are the people who are literally taking the money from from the federal government, from taxpayers. So when you say it might not be a good political position to say denaturalize and deport these people because of what they look like, you're not wrong. But I think the American people would rather have their $300 to $600 billion per year back. And they'll say it out loud. I want my money back, and I want to stop more of it from being defrauded and taken away from me. So I'll do what I have to do to make that happen. Because Scott Bessent, I don't know if you saw this, but the Treasury Secretary said on Sunday, between $300 and $600 billion per year is being stolen through these schemes. So over 2 years, what's the math here? If we're on the high end of 600, that's $1.2 trillion, and spread that out over 10 years. I think the American people would say, I'm willing to put up with being called a racist or whatever, if it means taking that kind of fraud the hell out of my country and giving me my money back so that I can actually live the life that I'm supposed to be allowed to with the money that I earn.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, the fact is, this is so profound that I think even Democrats have a difficult time defending this. But they're going to do their best. And of course, the only defense they've got is, to cry racism. They're going to do that. They'll beat that drum, and that's the only drum they really have, because when people start to take advantage, not start, but have been taking advantage of Americans in a profound way, we're looking not just like fools. This is absurd what's going on here. So something needs to be done about that. I think the Trump administration is on their way to doing that. And it's going to be fun to watch what the Democrat response is down the road. But
Well, you're right. It is. And by the way, it's not just the administration. I just threw this up on the screen too, if you can see it. Senate Republicans are pushing to denaturalize these fraudsters.
must be bad when you get their attention, huh?
Yeah, right. And Marsha Blackburn, who of course we had on before with the question for Ketanji, she's leading this push. The Fraud Accountability Act comes on the heels of the Minnesota scandal. She is sponsoring this. She said anyone who comes to the U.S. and steals from the taxpayers by committing fraud should be deported. More statements about the fraud. I'm trying to see who else is supporting her in this endeavor. I did see the name of at least one other senator. It might have been Cornyn there it is. Yeah, Cornyn and Cotton. And then a House version of the bill is going to be introduced by Buddy Carter from Georgia. So they're willing to go out there and say it, Pete. Not just the administration, but some Republican senators are apparently willing to go out there and say we've got to do what we've got to do, what's right for the American people. And political accusations of racism be damned. We've got to do what's right by the people.
Yeah, given the history we have of seeing how Republicans are scared to death of saying anything that may implicate race, it tells you how bad this is for Republicans to weigh in on this fashion, being completely unconcerned about being called a racist, or maybe not completely unconcerned, but they know the drill. They understand that they're going to be called a racist. But when you get to the point where you're just fleecing the United States of America to that extent, not just from a political imperative, but I think from a moral imperative, you must stop something like this. This is what the constituents want. I want that. You want it. Almost everybody wants it, and they understand this. This is our tax dollars. And these interlopers are coming in, not like other immigrants who've come to the United States. They didn't ask for any kind of largesse. They didn't ask for anything. In fact, in the first part of the 20th century, they came here to make their own way without any kind of support. They didn't have welfare or anything of that nature. But when you come to the United States of America and start to take advantage of our systems and really make us look like fools, our politicians need to do something about this. I'm not paying tax dollars so some guy in Minnesota can drive around in a Mercedes. That's ridiculous.
And it is amazing. I mean, the brazenness of it. I mean, and we talked about this before, but just real quick, a Somali national who is in Minnesota came here with $35,000, I think. No, I'm sorry, $65,000 in net worth, and now has over $35 million of net worth after being in Congress since 2018. And of course, I'm talking about Ilhan Omar. We talked about.
Why aren't we investigating that?
Right. Why are we investigating?
Investigation.
I want to see the paperwork for any one of these Somalis who are driving around Minneapolis in a Porsche. I mean, literally, I want to know, because again, 86% of the people in Minnesota who are Somalis are on welfare. So that means if you're driving a Porsche, that means you are one of the 14% who are not. And I know we don't go around forcing people to provide documents to prove the negative, that they're not committing a crime, but there has to be a way to check on the records of anybody that, again, is in an impoverished community that is somehow living large, living in bigger houses and driving nicer cars than the people whose tax dollars, mine and yours, are actually funding their extravagance.
Yeah, I think somebody smarter than me needs to come up with a system that prohibits access to certain welfare benefits for a certain period of time after you get into the United States. Okay, you are not permitted to access immediately welfare benefits. Again, there's certain types of exclusions with respect to refugee status, et cetera. But we have got a lot of folks who are coming into the United States and get on welfare immediately, and the welfare becomes a hammock. Again, I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush here, but we're talking a significant cohort of, number one, the illegal immigration population, and also the legal immigration population that are doing this, that never used to do it before.
Yeah, there's no question about it, and you're right. It's not speaking of everybody, but when you say a significant population, or cohort, we're talking again 80+% in that state. 80+% of them are still on welfare, so you have a legitimate reason to be suspicious. Pete, I'm going to close out by asking you about this. When you finally appeared on camera for the first time on our podcast, as we are now doing this on video as well, for a lot of people, probably not what they expected because, well, this is the guy that we thought we were getting. This is the guy that I promoted that we were getting. Look at that. There's something about the mustache and the beard that look a little bit off compared to the guy that's on my screen right now. What the hell? What's that?
What was it? Macaulay said, "For every man upon this earth, death cometh sooner or late." Well, so does old age. I'm getting older, the beard's getting whiter, but I'm still benching 350 for reps. Okay, just in case anybody thinks I'm getting decrepit. I'm still doing squats with well over 400 pounds, so that may be coming to an end. But I'm an old man. What can I say?
Well, I still haven't seen the evidence of your penance from last week's pledge of camera working and not working. You owe us 500 videotapes.
I'll get somebody to get their camera out and film me doing my push-ups.
Yeah, and I want it to be I want a timer on it because I want a continuous 500 push-ups or 50 sets of 10 or 10 sets of 50 or whatever you're going to do, because I don't want you to do 5 push-ups and have your editor loop it. Because that's what I'm afraid of here. I want to know for sure they're all being done. So I want to see an actual real-time counter going on that. So, all right, Peter Kirstenau, thank you, my friend. We always appreciate your analysis.
Thanks, Bob.
And
fun as usual.
And we look forward to it. We'll see you next week. Thank you, buddy. All right, that's Kirstenau for us. He actually came through today with the video. He failed the first 2 times. That's why we had the challenge last week. I said, hey, Pete, let's do a test. Let's do a test of your video to make sure that your camera's working this time. He said, nope, I guarantee it. I've got it fixed up. It's perfect. My IT guys fixed it. We're good to go. Next day, sure enough, I got a black screen and no Kirstenau. So, all right. I want to get into the chat for just a moment or two here before we wrap for the day. And also to say thank you to everybody who hung in there during the glitchy opening 15 minutes. We were not live on Rumble as I thought we were. For whatever reason, there was something in the code that was missing or whatever. But I was not live, and everybody in the chat room thought something had happened to me. Obviously, we're good, no problems. But thank you to everybody for your patience. Let's jump in and see what people have been talking about. Can't believe we have to go to the Supreme Court to decide the difference between a man and a woman. God already did that. Brilliant, CMG. Brilliant. Exactly correct. Did you see St. George Floyd's aunt talking to all the leftist hens yesterday? Charlie asked, no, I did not, but that doesn't surprise me. Clearly, the George Floyd graft is still going on as well. And yeah, they're trying to build 2.0 with Renee Good. Problem is, like I said to Pete, she doesn't fit the narrative. She's not black. There'll be a lot of outrage generated over her shooting. There already has been, but not near what it would be if she was black. Let's see. Sarah says, I'm only okay. Have a great day. Thank you, Sarah, for stopping in. Lindy says, Pete looking great, even though I pointed out the difference between then and now. When I first met Pete, he was jet black. That mustache was jet black. That curly cube handlebar mustache was not so much. But then again, when I first started that show, I was purely light brown and dirty blonde bearded as well. Look at all of the gray that's all finding its way into mine too. Anyway, Jimbo says the money for Antifa, taxpayer dollars funneled through the same corruption as the daycare fraud. Yeah, the big leftists are involved, but not legally direct. We'll see how it plays out. Indeed, Antifa is a huge, huge part of all of that. Libs will never build a statue for the poet, white privileged and all. Oh, I forgot to play my poem for Pete. See, Pete's smarter than us. Pete's not on social media. As a result, he's much more sane than we are, much more of a clear thinker. He's not influenced and poisoned by certain things. So he's not on social media. So he doesn't see my Instagram posts. He doesn't see my Facebook posts, my YouTube posts, et cetera, et cetera. So that means he has not yet experienced the beauty of my poetry. So I might as well share this with you before we go, because it's funny. It's funny and it's fun. And what the hell? Why not? So let me bring it up. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram for nuggets of enjoyment like this. This is what I did Saturday on my way to Medina County, friends and neighbors.
But she was a poet. She was just a poet. And you know, poets would never hurt anybody. The Minnesota mom, you know, much like the Maryland dad, the Minnesota mom would never hurt anybody. Okay, well, I'm a poet too. Are you ready? Here's mine. Tell me what you think. Roses are red, violets are blue, and if your trained Marxist anti-ICE warrior ass tries to run down a federal agent in your SUV, he might shoot you.
That's just, you know what? That was my thing. Now that was on my way to McFan, because you can see I just have the sweater on there. On the way home, I still had my jacket on from when I spoke. So on the way home from McFan, I brought the sequel.
All right, so our first poem went over so well and was so well received, I figure it's time for a sequel. So this one goes out to supporters of that special Minnesota mom. Here we go. Ice is cold. Fire is hot. You attack an ICE agent, you're gonna get shot.
Can you dig it?
Yeah, I gave myself a can you dig it for that one. What can I say? All right. Hey, thanks everybody. I appreciate you very much. Chatters, thank you for being in there. Once the live stream is over, which is now, don't forget to get into the comment section and leave your comments. Remember, Rumble and the algorithms like engagement. The more times you click the like button, the more times you leave comments, the longer you spend watching, then it helps us. And that's how we're going to grow our crowd, and we're going to push this out to more people. But we've got to do it ourselves. Grassroots works. And that's what our next job is. Please, just because I'm logging off, don't turn off your computer, don't turn off your phone. Go to the channel and just push play on any video and let it play. There are 2 hours at a time, and let them all play, because again, more time spent viewing means more algorithmic push to the rest of, to the people who don't know that our show is here. So that's going to do. And don't forget, push the join button right now. If you haven't done it yet, if you're in the chat or if you're just watching, and if you're watching this later in the day on delay, push the join button. That's going to take you to our locals community. That is our war room. That is where you can become an unfiltered insider, and that means a paid supporter of the channel and the community. We're going to engage in there. You can start posting in there like it's Facebook or X for just us, just members of the community, as we continue to work and strategize. We're going to give you all kinds of extra benefits too if you are an unfiltered insider. So get into the community, the locals community for Strictly Speaking Unfiltered, and let's make things happen. All right. Thanks very much for being a part of it. Tomorrow, you're going to like it. We're going to talk to a guest from the UK. Mark Sutherland is a guy that I've spoken to on Citizens for Free Speech podcast in the past about the death of free speech and the death of freedom, quite frankly, in the UK and more broadly across Western Europe, and what impact that's going to have on you and me. If you don't think there's going to be an impact from there to here, you're not paying attention, and that's why you need to listen to Mark Sutherland. So Mark will be with us tomorrow at 7:30 as a part of our show, so I hope to see you then, and hopefully you will see him then. So thank you so much for watching, for being a part of the show today. Thanks for your patience in the chat room, for all of the glitches as well. And that's it. Be well, be safe, stay free, my patriot friends. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered.